Thank you very much. All right, just so everybody knows, each time that we begin a meeting, since we're now using the owl, I will make sure and let everyone know that we're recording. That way, not that anybody would ever say anything inappropriate, but just to make sure. So we are now recording, so everybody understands. Some people don't care. They just come in and they're going to say what they're going to say. So, we'll start the meeting in Justin, if you would be so kind as to do an invocation for us, please.
Yes, sir. Let's pray. Father God, thank you for today. Lord, thank you for our many blessings. Thank you for all those gathered here tonight and coming together to make decisions to improve our county. Lord, we pray for your wisdom as we make decisions tonight. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. All right, entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, want
Yes,
to
sir.
make sure that we add one item to the agenda, if David hasn't mentioned it to you, and that is the item of up to $1,000
For the owl
for
storage.
the securing of the owl.
The perch.
See, I knew we could get away from it. Yes, sir, that one is included, so.
Thank you, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right, had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Passes. Recognition of the public, anybody choose to speak? All right. Approval of minutes, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sounds good. John, my report, Mr. Isabel was going to come. There's an interpretation of a rule in from the Secretary's office, and what it has to do with the appraisals and commercial properties being allowed to appeal their appraisals. It originated out of Memphis, and what happened was there is an interpretation of it that says in the second year of every appraisal cycle, or 4 or 5, whatever it might be, that they have, commercial business has the opportunity to appeal it, and when they do so, there's not really a process to stop it, and there's an automatic set number that kind of goes with it. I think it was
Let's reduce the ratio,
yeah,
which will
and what happens is it
kill
just
us.
it in layman's terms, it just allows for a large reduction in the commercial taxes, which then would shift a large burden of that to the residential taxes. So obviously no one wants that. Mr. Isabel's office, the group of their organization, the property assessors, Mr. Holt's organization of county mayors,
we did pass that to oppose it.
and everyone has been pleading their case. And initially it was, and again, it's not something the legislature can fix because it's a rule interpretation. My understanding is, and John was going to come speak to us about it and kind of give us how bad it could be. They're going to hold off until January now for a more formal decision. We're hoping at that point that they'll reevaluate how they do it. If they don't, what the idea has been, and what we've kind of talked about is one way to bypass this is if you go to a 2-year appraisal cycle, it eliminates it. 3-year doesn't do it, and 4-year doesn't do it, but a 2-year does eliminate it. He's talking to his organization. That's come up for a lot of them now, especially for the large ones. And like I said, in Memphis, what happened was they had 1 or 2, there was a law firm that had done it once or twice, had some success, so then they went out and kind of recruited some business, and they filed 1,600 for 1,600 different businesses. And so it kind of shut Memphis down as far as their appeals and everything else, so that's why it's come about right now. Yes, sir, Mr. Holt.
I was going to reiterate what you're saying. This goes to the State Board of Equalization, Commissioner, and they will bring it up in January again. It looks like it's going to pass, but our legislators have to agree to it through legislative action during session. So if it does pass, you need to, as commissioners, contact your state representatives. Of course, we have 2 in leadership, one in the Senate, one in the House of Representatives. And you're exactly right. What this is going to do, not immediately, but if we cut the business tax and the property tax for commercial up to could be 30%, then eventually what we're going to have to do is increase the property tax to make up for the lost revenue, and then it does shift the burden over to the residential owner. And that's going to be huge, and that's going to be across the state. We need to make that very clear to our legislators that if they agree to that, they're agreeing, and we need to, frame it in that sense of shifting a huge tax burden to the homeowners. That's not gonna be good.
Mr. Good?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based on what the county executive is saying, and based on what we know to be factual about what would happen, I would make a motion that we let Leah do the verbiage along with what the county mayor can get from the association, a resolution that we would be able to have by December, because it's too late for November, that we could send our delegation saying we strongly oppose this as a county.
And I think it needs to say something like, we strongly encourage the State Board of Equalization not to pass a rule change.
I've got a
And we
motion. Do I have a
strongly,
second by Mr. Jimenez.
strongly suggest our legislators not to support that rule change.
All in favor of that one?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Good.
Thanks, sir.
Again, Mr. Isbell said he'll update us, and then he's also going to come to the full commission meeting and update us on it too. He said he will definitely keep us apprised of how that one's shaking out, because it's something that impacts us all in a bad way.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. That is all I've got for right now. Mr. Lyon? Or actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Holt first.
No, sir, I think you've covered it.
Mr. Lyon?
The first sheet I have here is the revenue analysis for the first 3 months of the year for the local revenues only. As it currently stands, conservatively, we look like we're gonna be positive on revenues, but this is just based on the first 3 months, and up to 2 of those months were receivables for the prior fiscal year, which means a lot of these revenues just have one month in. The biggest concerns right now would be hotel motel taxes, which was one we were looking at. We're running behind right now, but there's still more hotels that are planning to come online, and then there's also the court decision early this past fiscal year that had a very negative impact. Still watching that closely. We're going to be maybe slightly shorter, about break even on those. But looking at it overall conservatively, we think we're still going to be in the black or green, whichever one way you want to say it, by a margin, but not quite as large as prior years. The second item is actually the approval from the comptroller's office for the budget. They usually want us to send that on to the county commission. They've also made one note this year, which I think everybody in the room is aware of. Let me get back. It's on page 4 and 5. The note that they discussed is on page 4. And basically, they're just making the committee or the commission and me, which we already were aware that the highway did not have a projected 1 month's worth of reserves in their ending fund balance. As Ms. Judy said, it's a tight year. They've asked me to present I guess, cash flows to the county commission, and here is a set of what I anticipate if this committee approves to go ahead and send on to the county commission, along with the letter.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Short and sweet, what the comptroller's office is referring to make 1 month's worth of expenditures for the highway, they would have to have a projecting fund balance of somewhere around $807,000. They had $221,000. If you look at the front page, and I kind of go into the description, if you notice the cash flows are kind of going up and down based on where we thought they would be, and that's completely relied upon when these cash payments are made, so it's really not a good indicator at all of the financial position. As all anticipations, the highway fund will still have a positive cash and fund balance at the end of the year, just like it's projected. But this and the memo, if the committee approves, needs to go ahead and go forward to the county commission, is what they've requested.
Do we need a motion for that, Ms. Downs?
What's the county gonna do it? Are we
Yeah.
sending,
We're just making them aware of it, nothing, just making them aware that there's less than 1/12 worth of
it's just
reserves,
information only?
which we do, and then give them where I've been monitoring the cash flows, which we do
It's
anyway.
basically respond to the comptroller's office and let them know that the commission understands.
So moved. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mr. Jennifer. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sounds good.
The
Mr.
next-
Chairman,
Yes, sir?
there's one thing, I want to go back, if you would let me do it, and I want to compliment the law office, and I forgot to do this. We had a tax sale, and they did a phenomenal job. Properties that didn't pay for their taxes beforehand, and how many ponied up and paid out of those you sold?
Oh, we started out with several hundred, ended up with 33, sold, I think 18 of them, and
Bought a phenomenal price.
brought, well, what was amazing was they sold for almost $600,000, but it brought in $150,000 to the county just that day.
Now, remember, these are people, so don't feel too bad about these people. They haven't paid their taxes in 10 years.
Well, some of them, just
Some
a
of 'em.
couple.
So, pretty phenomenal. And I can tell you this, and I'm not trying to get any money for her, but she does this out of her salary. Most counties pay another entity to have tax sales and pay them substantial amount of money, and she does that just out of goodwill, because most county attorneys do not take that on. She's not gonna say that, but I know how it works around the state of Tennessee, so you really need to thank her for all her hard work, and I'm sorry I spoke.
Thank you, Madam Owner.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe we should make a motion to appreciate the law director.
Certificate.
Can you write that, please?
We are technically, in the tax sale, they pay 10% attorney's fees, and most county attorneys get the 10%. I pay it back to y'all, so it pays my salary.
And that is the truth, and I don't think many commissioners understand that, and that's pretty phenomenal.
David, will you be sure to put that on the agenda for the big commission meeting so we can mention that?
Okay,
Thank you,
sorry,
sir. Nope.
didn't mean to slow you down.
Thank you.
Something I don't think any of us mind to hear.
Okay. Item C is just informing the county commission that the financial statements are on the website, which they are there each month, and that's another thing the comptroller's office wanted to reiterate that we should do, which we do anyway. The other one's the Justice Center project. The only thing I mentioned, there was contingency funds. We put it under, because we have to code it, under miscellaneous costs, and I was just wanting the approval of the committee to adjust between the required what line items and what money as we need to issue POs. And it's asking for formal approval to do that.
Do we need a motion for that?
Without objection, yeah.
Mhm. Second.
All right, I move. Ms. Shell second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously.
Any transfers, I'll just put on the transfer sheet the following month and note it. And that's the end of my report, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. New business, budget amendments.
Motion approved, A1.
Thank you, sir. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. The next part's information only. Go on. B, appropriations, county mayor. This is where Mr. Holt has someone retiring from his office. She is leaving at the end of the month, or the end of December, but the problem is he won't be able to hire somebody to replace her until after she's off the books.
Caitlin.
It's actually a position that he really needs someone to come in and train for at least a few weeks beforehand, so they're familiar with it. It's a common problem we have in government, and I just ask that we find the $7,800 needed, so that way he can have 1 month of overlap between the two positions, so she can train up on, or the new person can train up on, whoever it may be.
I request to waive the second reading.
Second.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
And request to waive the second reading.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All
And
right.
by the way, if those don't know it, Caitlin, she's leaving. Her husband has got really a great job proposition working for FedEx, but he's got to go through training, mechanic school, and that's going to be a huge salary increase. I think they start at $80,000 and then go up from there. So she's moving back to be with her family
When did she leave?
at end of December.
All right, the next one is a $1,000 stipend from the state to Assistant Finance Director for completion of certified county finance programs. This is something that comes up, it's for Miss Bethany, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it's flow through funds for our
Yeah.
certification.
But I so move.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can we vote, because like items
To do
2,
it
3,
twice.
4, 5, for all those, if possible, to waive the second reading,
Okay.
because they're all flow through funds.
Everybody good on that? All right. Thank you, sir. For 3, 4, and 5, entertain a motion to group and approve.
So moved.
Thank you, sir. There we go. All in favor, and again, this was without a second reading. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. By silence. Number 6, Habitat for Humanity. It's a request for $5,433 contribution for building fees. They're asking us to waive our portion of the permits and everything else, I think this is something we probably want to discuss still.
We've done this every other time, just for your information. This is just to provide affordable housing to people, and all they're doing is they're plowing this money back in to build more and more structures.
At a certain point, I make the motion so we can begin discussion.
Second.
Thank you, sir. At some point, the committee that's dealing with the nonprofits will probably also address something like this. Obviously, they're not ready for a finished product yet, because I think everybody's waiting for them to solve most of our problems, so. But,
No pressure.
I just want to mention that because that is one
Yeah.
more thing along the long list of stuff y'all keep getting stuck with, so.
You'll have to appropriate and pay it back to them, I believe they've paid this already.
Yeah, it becomes a charitable contribution, we have to notice it in the newspaper and all
Notice
that.
it and we'll have to appropriate it.
Yeah, it's like a
Ideally, I would like to see nonprofit donations come through through one process and one timing, and not approving things.
Well,
The
problem
problem with this
is
is you
so
don't know
there's-
how many you're gonna build.
Or
And
when they're
so,
gonna build
as
them.
they go through the year, they're building these, and this is basically impact fee and all of that. And so they may build 10 one year, 20 the next year, 5 the next year, and so you're constantly gonna get them from Habitat. They're in a different situation.
Is it something that we could add, that we could set up a process so that we're not using man hours and resources to have to pay and then turn around and give them their money back, to where maybe in the front end?
You might,
can't do it?
this might be a legal question, but you might could pass
might
a
I
blanket
see-
resolution
See
every
if they
year.
Get it, I'm seeing a
You
big
could
no.
every year.
it's a charitable contribution,
Yeah,
and we've gotta
charitable
go
fee.
through that process. David and I have looked
You
every which
provide them the
way.
fees.
Yeah.
One of the fees is for the actual, people to have to inspect
Oh,
their
yeah.
property, and then the other fee is actually construction of these schools. So you're actually waiving two total fee structures. for
Yeah,
these houses.
you're
They're not
impacting.
contributing toward new schools, and they're not
So we're-
paying the cost of it, but, minutes.
All right. Well, again, Ms. Whit and Mr. Nimber are gonna take care of all this stuff, so it'll be fine.
Take care of it all. No, what's interesting is when we look at reporting on Habitat, we don't necessarily show them as, we've pulled reporting to look at the nonprofit contributions. So Habitat for Humanity, it might be coded a little bit differently in the way.
Do you want to
vers-
just send a packet in? Because unless you waive it,
Right.
this is the first reading, so it'll need a second reading or a waiver tonight. Do you want to do a first reading and have our office to request they send some
No,
information
I don't
in,
think
or-
so. I think it's just a matter of being able to, what I'd like to be able to do for the nonprofit, creating a plan going forward, I think it would be ideal if we can see all of the nonprofit contributions that have happened over the course of the year and allocate for them during a combined annual process. And so if we knew that, let's say this year or last year, that we were allocating a total of, let's say, $10,000. I mean, I know it comes up, is this an annual request, or is this just for
They
what
do
they
it
are
when they build
currently
a house.
breaking ground up?
Just when they build a house.
When they're
So
breaking
we don't
ground.
know what they're gonna build.
So-
They sporadically send it in a request.
Right.
But
But
you
we
know-
would know last year that maybe we gave them a total.
Really, this is a little bit different, even though I know technically it's the same, because what you're doing is, in one sense, you're collecting revenue and then you're dispersing revenue at the beginning of the budget year. Whereas this is, you're just foregoing revenue, but it's still a charitable donation. So it's kind of a different animal.
Yeah, opportunity.
But it brings up a question, do you want, since we are donating them funds, does this committee want us to require them to do the packet? We never have in the past. A lot of times when people come in mid-year, we do require them to.
I would say
send
yes,
donations.
but y'all
I
are
think
redoing the package.
I would
Thank you.
prefer to see them do the packet, and I would prefer for us during an annual budget process, when we allocate funding towards nonprofits, that we could account for something, and maybe, so therefore it
Well-
becomes,
Well, let me just say
They
this,
have the
and
minimum
I love our
requirement.
finance director, but he is the most by the book, don't break any rules. You send him a message, he's gonna go down that rabbit hole. The point is,
Got it.
you're gonna have a very difficult time budgeting at the beginning of the year,
A number you don't know.
a number you don't know and won't know,
Can we just pick it up?
and so that's gonna be difficult. So I'm just saying, I don't know
But we
how
could
we
also
treat that
be-
Initially,
initially.
we get the
we could be
report.
capping our contribution. We could say that, if we look at it over the last,
Well,
because they're not gonna build 5 or 10 any given year. They're gonna build 2 or 3.
This is about 3. This amount
So it's not worth it.
amounts to about 3.
Well, and their Packard Place project is
They
different
do,
because they've got
they-
multiple homes.
By
in
minimum, they have to file their audit or the form from the state comptroller's office and tell what they do, basically. That's the minimum required. We will ask them for that before we make the payment, but,
Yeah.
which is what we've historically done. But we can require the whole packet. That's the question here, not.
I don't think we need to require it for this
I agree.
part of this fiscal year,
Just
but I just would like to
In
have
the
some better
budget
data
process, yeah.
to think about
The only
next
thing
year.
I'm saying is this, Habitat is really doing us a favor, and let me tell you why. They're providing affordable housing to people who will never be able to afford a house. And once they build that house, they're gonna have to pay property taxes. So we're ultimately the beneficiary.
I would love for us to support that.
I'm just
Continue to
saying,
support
that's,
that. We
I think
always
it's an
have.
awesome program.
Yep.
So, yeah.
All in
Couldn't
favor?
agree more.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we're doing it unanimously so that we don't have to do the second reading. I knew you were going. And so it passes, all right. Next one's gonna be just our transfers.
The ad hoc, $2,000, Mr.
Oh, yes. Number 7 is $1,000 for go ahead, Mr. the perch. Yes, sir. For the perch, which is up to $1,000 for a way to secure
moved.
the owl so that it can be accessible for each community meeting or committee meeting as they come.
So moved.
And additional storage.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There's another one in the Comer barn.
See?
We waived
Let it go.
Was the intent to waive the second reading?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
He makes a mess, though.
No.
Passes unanimously. Scott's,
Oh,
somewhere Scott's smiling. So, thank you, Mr. Commander. Transfers,
There is one, the first one was between major categories, nothing unusual. It's for the highway department. It will need to go to county commission.
so move. Thank you, sir. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, sounds good.
The second group, B and C, there's nothing unusual except for one item that needs to be discussed, and it was sent from Ag Extension. He has 2 transfers. One, he's anticipating giving a raise 50 cents all year to employee by transfer, or on the second one, he's asking for approval to give a raise $1 January going forward. Historically, everybody's been discouraged from doing that because you're really guaranteeing one of 2 things. You're guaranteeing more funds next year or a decrease in the existing employee salary. It's really up to the committee, but from a financial perspective, the most sound would be the 50 cents for the whole year. Unless you're-
And he's here, and what I was gonna say is, obviously, next year, depending on we won't know what the number's gonna be until David's done with all of his projections and everything else about how much each department will be increased. We can look at this the same way we did with the judge, where we could allow him to do this now early with the idea that that's gonna be against the money he would be getting. And if for some reason, something dramatic happens and the county doesn't have any money, we're zero out for the year, then he would understand it would need to be a budget reduction somewhere else.
So that would be correct. Bob.
The funds that I'm utilizing and transferring, asking for the transfer are additional funds that are available in the current year's budget.
I think what they're talking about, Bob, is the prospective point for how it's gonna be funded next year.
How we pay for it next year. What we're saying is, we expect an increase in each department's budget. If you're willing to accept that that's part of your increase, that's great. And if for some reason we have a calamity that strikes the county where we have 0% or less, then just understand you may have to help figure out where that money's coming from in the worst of times, which I can't see that happening in the next 4 months, but, okay. Just as long as you're in agreement with that.
So moved.
So
Yes, sir.
So you've got 2 adjustments in there. Which one did you want to propose to, Bob?
Well, what I proposed the 2, just to provide a couple of opportunities for the committee to look at it and think of. So my goal was to increase the salaries for 2 employees 50 cents an hour. And to either do that by going back retro to July the 1st, and that way it would stay, the new rate would stay then in the next fiscal year, or to go from January 1 forward, $1 an hour, and it would be the same money. So it would still be the same annual salary, quote unquote, as you look toward the next year's budget. But whatever, I didn't know what the committee would want to do, what they would.
Did you recommend the which option did you
Long's
recommend?
suggestion was
Historically, we've
50 cents?
recommended not doing that because
Right.
it makes budgetary guarantees unless there's some understanding that if the money's not there next year, that they'll have to decrease their budget. That's what I'm saying. It's really up to the committee, but historically, it's been something you've tried not to do.
And you might have said this, I just kind of missed it. What was the driving force behind requesting for the increase now?
These two employees, it's an equity adjustment for these two employees, and it's moving from one salary line item to the other because these two employees are county funded, county paid. Everyone else now is moving toward being funded not the same way and not paid by the county, paid to the university. So I was able to make some equity adjustments utilizing the previous line item, but there were no additional funds in this particular line item to do that for these two employees. And so I wanted to be equitable and fair.
To their peers?
Yes, I make the motion that we do so for the 50 cents with the understandings of the ramifications for next year and how it would need to be.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Is this second reading, Dave?
No, these are transfers, so they don't require something.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Tax refunds, Ms. Denny?
Motion approved 1 through 4. I talked to Ms. Dennis. She says we're good.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passed unanimously. Anything else? Any Al-related, motion?
No more?
Hooty-hoo.